Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Board While Waiting show. One of the highlights of this week was Meta's earnings call, and following this, I actually converted some TTD stock to Meta and also loaded additional capital onto Meta, which is why you see a fall in TTD's percentage, as well as an increase in overall capital invested so far into this portfolio. A lot of people have been fixated by the increased capex spending and weaker forward guidance during this earnings call, which likely resulted in Meta's price falling. In this episode, I will skip past these 2 points and instead talk about three other underrated things from this earnings release before revealing what Zuckerberg mentions to be Meta's next big focus. The first underlooked point I want to talk about is Threads. Here's a screenshot from the earnings transcript where Zuckerberg says, Threads is growing well. There are now more than 150 million monthly actives, and it continues to be on the trajectory I hoped to see. I don't know if you remember, but less than a year ago, when Meta first launched Threads, it immediately peaked at 44 million users. And then there was that controversy where people complained that it was an auto opt-in app and many people left. There were also people that said that Threads is just a Twitter copy and it wouldn't amount to much. So soon after the number of users dropped by 80% to about 8 million MAUs or monthly active users, it has actually grown 18 times from this low of 8 million users to 150 million MAUs today, even after this negative episode in less than 1 year. So don't forget, 150 million MAUs is already half that of Twitter, which is at about 330 million MAUs. Twitter started in about 2006 and it took them 18 years to reach that amount of MAUs, whereas Threads started just last year, and in less than a year, it has already achieved 150 million MAUs. So this earnings report shows that we should never underestimate Meta and its ability to increase subscribers and engagement across its social network. We've seen this story many times before when Meta copied stories and overtook Snapchat, and then they did Reels, which has since caught up with TikTok. And now we start to see a similar pattern play out with Threads. So you don't need to be the first mover to win, much like what Apple did with its iPhone versus the BlackBerry. But more importantly, we can see how aggressive Zuckerberg is in continuing to challenge all other social networks and the amount of leverage Meta has to increase users by taking advantage of its existing network effects. The second overlooked point is that of outsized adoption of image expansion with small businesses. If you recall a couple of months ago in an earlier episode I made, I ranked companies by generative AI impact in the short to medium term. In that episode, I made a specific prediction to how generative AI would impact Meta. Let me replay the part I mentioned. The primary use case is the inclusion of Gen AI into the ad center. This means that advertisers can reduce their advertising budgets because they would require less labor and OPEX in developing advertising collaterals such as images or backgrounds for their ads. So it turns out that the first part of my prediction has actually turned out pretty well. In this earnings call that I highlight here in the screenshot from their earnings transcript, Meta mentions that they've seen outsized adoption of image expansion with small businesses, and it will remain a big focus for them in 2024. As more businesses use Meta's Gen AI tools, it should naturally lead to two outcomes. Firstly, advertisers can push out ads on Meta at a faster pace. Because Meta makes money from ad spend, the faster ads are being pushed out by companies, the faster Meta will earn revenue from these ads. Secondly, using more Gen AI tools would mean that businesses can reduce their operating campaign costs, such as money that would otherwise spend to pay designers. This means that some of that OPEX or operating costs can be diverted back as ad spend on Meta to drive return on ad spend for these companies. And that should lead ultimately to the same outcome, which is more revenues for Meta and faster revenues for Meta. To better explain the third and final underrated takeaway I got from this earnings call, I want to show you here a conversation I had recently with a travel advisor. So, the situation was that I was trying to upgrade my flight tickets between Singapore and Toronto for an upcoming company trip. So, I reached out to this online travel agency's customer support. And here you can see I got assigned an advisor whose name is Eva, who managed to fetch details of my upcoming flight, and then she proceeds to ask me which flight I'd like to upgrade to. I chose the Toronto to Singapore leg of my journey, and then Eva started to check on a couple of upgrade options for me. Eva then gave me an option to upgrade with some details that I could read. And then I proceeded to select a payment method and put in my credit card to complete the upgrade. So this looks like any other interaction you'd have with an online customer support. Now, the catch is this. Eva is not real. Eva is actually an AI agent that was built by the travel company I was booking with that is called Navan, this company. And this AI agent that Navan built was using an LLM generative AI model that is called the MPT model with 30 billion parameters in order to create this Eva bot. Well, agent is a better name because chatbot sounds like it's just an old dinosaur model of chatbots we used to work with, right? And if we take a look at the leaderboard for LLMs, we see that this MPT LLM that was used to build Eva, which is the one I just interacted with, currently ranks at 54 on the general evaluation leaderboards for LLMs. So can you imagine the vast difference in quality if Meta were to build on similar AI agents for similar purposes with their currently ranked 6 Llama 3 70 billion model? And that is precisely my last overlooked point from this earnings call. During this earnings call, Zuckerberg mentions that there is a longer term piece around business AIs, which is the idea of setting up AI agents which can support use cases such as shopping or completing a certain purchase. A very similar conversation I had with Eva. So Meta has already begun testing this with a handful of businesses on Messenger and WhatsApp. So AI should dramatically bring down the costs of these interactions on Meta. The whole idea of an AI agent, as Zuckerberg describes, is that it is more agent than chatbot, which means that you give this agent a goal, which in my case was to upgrade to business class for my flight, and then the AI agent goes off in the background to check a number of things, such as in my case, what flights I'm talking about, checking the internal flight databases for upgrade options, and then presenting me with a final option to upgrade and the ability to finish the transaction with a credit card payment. Entire process not requiring a single human to facilitate this interaction. And this, I think, is incredibly powerful because can you imagine every business on Meta that is able to turn their conversations through these AI agents 24/7 into sales revenue automatically without a single need for outsourcing or for costly support centers. It also helps that WhatsApp's business platform that was reported in this earnings in terms of revenue grew tremendously at 85% year on year. This combination of AI agents that Meta is working on plus the rapid growth of WhatsApp, I think will be a huge revenue growth lever in the next 5 years for Meta. And so coming back to the Meta price chart, I feel that the price dip is an overreaction to the slight capex increased spending that Zuckerberg mentions together with the mildly weaker revenue forecast. Because in the long run, don't forget the capex that they are spending this time, a lot of it is into AI. And that AI is used to power the agents that I've just demonstrated, which could drive even more revenue. I feel that Meta, in addition, still demonstrates an incredible ability to increase users even at its huge size, as evidenced by the performance of threads over the last 1 year. Generative AI tools should also be a huge tailwind for Meta's core business, and I continue to hold the theory that Gen AI technology benefits any company that deals with media assets such as images and videos, and Meta is the first company that comes to mind. The rise of AI agents, together with WhatsApp's explosive growth, will further drive medium term revenue. And this is precisely why I immediately bought the dip following this earnings announcement. I hope you enjoyed this episode and thank you for your time.